Have you ever noticed that almost everyone thinks they're a better than average driver? More thoughtful than most people, more self-aware, more generous, even more intelligent? Statistically, that's impossible. Yet somehow, we all quietly believe we're the exception. Today, we're pulling open that very human illusion, why your brain convinces you that you're better than average, even when you're not. And why this tiny lie shapes your relationships, your failures, your success, and even the choices you don't realize you're making. Because this isn't just a psychological glitch, it's a survival instinct hiding in plain sight. Let's say a group of researchers gathers a room full of volunteers and asks a simple question: are you above average in honesty? Almost everyone raises their hand. Then they ask, are you above average in kindness? Hands go up again. Then comes the best one. Are you above average in driving? Every hand rises. Even the people who literally arrived late because they got lost. That moment isn't about arrogance. It's about how your brain protects your identity. Because believing I'm better than most people isn't about being right. It's about feeling safe. You see, your self-worth has a delicate center, like glass wrapped in armor.
The belief that you're above average, that's part of the armor. It keeps you from feeling like you're constantly falling behind. This instinct is so strong that researchers found something bizarre. Even when shown hard data that proves they're average, people still cling to the belief that they're exceptional. Because the truth threatens something deeper than logic. It threatens the story you live inside. Let's rewind. Every child grows up surrounded by adults who say things like, you're special, you're gifted, you're capable of anything. And those aren't bad things. Encouragement is fuel. But children rarely hear the part that grounds it. You're special, and so is everyone else. So the brain forms a quiet assumption. If I'm special, it must mean I'm ahead. Then school begins, and suddenly life becomes a comparison game. Grades, sports, talent, popularity. And if you're not the best, your brain cleverly shifts the rules. Sure, I'm not great at math, but I'm nicer than most people. Okay, maybe I'm not athletic, but I understand people better than everyone else. You become the architect of a private scoreboard, one where you always win. This is where the better than average bias takes root. Not out of arrogance, but out of psychological necessity, because the alternative, that you're just average, feels like emotional freefall. Fast forward to adulthood. Now we have careers, relationships, responsibilities, and the comparison game becomes louder.
Suddenly, you're surrounded by people who seem more successful, more disciplined, who look like they've cracked some secret formula for life. And again, your brain steps in with the illusion. But I make better choices. I'm more thoughtful than they are. I handle things better than most. This bias is comforting, but it's also costly. Because every time you assume you're better than average, you quietly tune out the lessons life is trying to teach you. You stop noticing the areas where you actually need improvement. You miss warnings. You miss opportunities. And most dangerously, you grow blind to your own blind spots. That's why some people repeat the same mistakes for years. Not because they're stubborn, but because their brain has convinced them they're already above average in the very thing they struggle with. There's a moment in all of our lives, sometimes subtle, sometimes explosive, when this illusion cracks. A failed relationship, a career setback, a conflict that exposes something we didn't want to see. Those moments humble us, and they're painful, but deeply necessary. Because humility isn't weakness, it's a doorway, and stepping through it is the first step toward becoming better than you thought you were.
To understand why we all secretly believe we're a little better than average, you have to go way back. Long before cities, cars, or social media. Back when survival was the only metric that mattered. Early humans lived with constant risk. Every single day demanded confidence. The confidence to hunt, to fight, to explore unknown territory, to make a decision without ever being truly certain. A human who underestimated their abilities, they froze, they hesitated, they died. So the brain developed a clever survival strategy:
overestimate yourself just enough to keep moving forward. Your ancestors survived not because they saw themselves with perfect accuracy, but because they believed they were capable, even when they weren't fully sure. That instinct is still living inside of you. It's the voice that whispers, "You can handle this. You're good at this." That voice kept your ancestors alive, but in our modern world, it hasn't quite updated. So instead of giving you courage in the wilderness, it gives you overconfidence in traffic, or in a disagreement with a friend, or about your performance at work.
It's the same ancient instinct, just misplaced in a world that looks nothing like the one that shaped it. But for almost everyone, there comes a moment when this illusion breaks, and it usually happens quietly, in a place you least expect. Maybe it's during an argument with someone you care about. At first, you're absolutely certain you're right. You feel sharper, more rational, more emotionally composed than they are. But then, they say something that stops you cold. Something that reveals a flaw you didn't know you had or didn't want to admit. A selfish habit, a blind spot in how you communicate, a pattern you always blame on everyone else. For a split second, the floor just drops out. You see yourself not as above average, but as vulnerable, imperfectly human. It stings. It can feel humiliating. But that single moment, as painful as it is one of the most important revelations a person can have. Because real growth doesn't come from believing you're better than most people. Real growth comes from finally recognizing the places where you aren't. Think about how many problems this bias silently creates.
You assume you listen better than most, so you never realize you interrupt more than you think. You assume you're kinder than average, so you overlook the moments your frustration hurts someone. And maybe the biggest one, you assume your perspective is more correct. And not assumption is the birthplace of nearly every avoidable conflict. This isn't malicious, it's about comfort. But comfort can be blinding. When you believe you're already above average, you stop asking the questions that actually help you grow. What am I missing here? How could I be wrong? The most successful, grounded, and emotionally intelligent people are not the ones who think they're above average. They're the ones who stay intensely curious about themselves. They question their own reactions. They examine their patterns. They treat humility as a tool, not a weakness. And in a beautiful, ironic twist, those are the people who actually become above average. Not because they believe they are, but because they never, ever stop trying to improve. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, "I'm more patient than most people," or "I understand things better than they do," just pause, take a breath, and ask yourself the one question that separates growth from illusion. What if I'm not? Because the moment you allow for the possibility that you're just like everyone else, beautifully imperfect, wonderfully human, and forever in progress, that's the moment you rise above average for real. Not in confidence, not in ego, but in self-awareness. And self-awareness is where a better life begins.
All right, confession time. You survived this whole video, which officially makes you above average, at least in attention span. Trust me, that's rarer than you think. Now, before your brain runs off saying, see, I knew I was exceptional, remember this. We all think we're the hero of the movie. Some of us just didn't read the script, and that's okay. The fun part of life is realizing where we've been confidently wrong and laughing at it later. So go out there today with a little more curiosity, a little less ego, and a willingness to say, wow, I really thought I nailed that, huh? And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. I promise valuable self-awareness lessons with slightly fewer reality checks next time. Thanks for watching.